Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Got to work on a couple things today. Let me show you what we got going on. Okay, a little behind the scenes action here. I just did a very rough mock-up of the cooler loop that's got a built-in filter. And so some of the lines that I have were too long, but I just wanted to, go through and see what lengths I needed. So after doing that, I ordered a couple of the correct lengths that I need to get rid of those giant loops that are there. So we got those. I got some additional fittings here in this box. So we'll get those busted open and get those installed. I guess that'll be the first thing we work on today. So let's get started on that. Alright guys, here's what I ended up with for the routing. So this line right here comes out of the transmission and it goes around and then down into the bottom of the cooler, comes out the top. The top goes to the inlet of the filter, and then out from the filter goes around and back into the transmission. I left a little bit of, it kind of looks like it's sitting on the transmission, but it's not. There's about a 1/2 inch space under here. Also, my thought process is when the fluid heats up, it'll push on those lines a little bit and it'll raise them up even further. Even though it's attached to the transmission mount, it's got plenty of room to move around. Not that this assembly moves around much. It really doesn't, because of the solid mounts that are on the front of the motor, and then these ones as well. My other thought process is the fuel tank here. I think we've got it just perfect where the fitting that comes out is a 90. It's going to sit down in this little valley, and then I have a space that goes through right here to drop the fuel line in and then reconnect it. So that's a plus. Let me show you what we're up against next. All right, another behind the scenes task that I was doing, which is rather boring. I removed the TCU and all the wiring, and it's sitting inside here. Obviously I'm not going to use any of that. However, you can see this empty hole here on the front of the timing case. That is for an RPM sensor. Now, when I went to remove it, the wires were so brittle on it that they failed when I took it out. And so I had to come up with a solution. Well, it took me about 4 hours and a couple of forms to find out the part number for this thing. And this magnet with 2 wires attached to it is $170 to $200. So, and it has a strange thread pitch on it, which is not normal for the magnetic pickup sensors for tachometers and whatnot. It has this type of thread on it. So my thought process was to buy an M16 by 1.5 and to re-thread it to these threads with this die. Now this combination right here cost me 30 bucks. So I could go through 5 of those before I would ever come to the cost of this. I don't know if this is going to work. The alternative option is to buy another one of these if I'm not able to get this, and it might be a total failure. I'll try to thread it and it'll break or whatever because it's just a cheap little magnetic sensor. But if that's the case, I can order a M16 by 1.5 tap, which is what I believe this is, and then thread it into the bell housing on the motor there and pick up the flywheel teeth. Of course, the tachometer in this, the RPM indicator, is adjustable. It's an ISS Pro unit, and you can go anywhere from 0 to 256 teeth if you want to, and I think that flywheel is right around 160. But I'm going to make an attempt to get this threaded and set to the correct depth and whatnot and install it, but like I said, it may or may not work. So let's go. All right, that worked out way better than I expected. It threaded very easily, and I got it set to the correct torque and everything inside that timing cover. I Loctited the adjustment nut on it to the correct depth. I'll have to turn the engine over by hand just to make sure it's not hitting anything, but yeah, now I just have to adapt. I think I have one of these connectors around. Adapt that to the RPM gauge. So yeah, that worked out great. The next task that we have here is installing this dipstick tube. Now I ordered a Dorman replacement stick, and surprisingly enough, it is the correct length to get into the pan. However, I'll have to make a punch mark on it, like somewhere up here, because I think that's the top of the pan, just so I have some sort of a reference for fluid levels. Strangely enough, if you go to look for an Allison AT545 dipstick tube, they're like 200 bucks. And I've got like 2 of them sitting here. One of them's got a really bad kink in it, so I can't use it, but this one should work just fine. And this is a locking dipstick. I think this dipstick was actually 22 bucks shipped or something, and it's made by, I just said it and I can't remember. Imagine that. Anyhow, I think we will make an attempt to get this installed next and see where this ends up being. Maybe there's a convenient bolt hole somewhere that I can attach that to, but yeah, that's the next step in the process. Alright, that wasn't too bad. I used an existing hole on the back of the block and a bolt to get the dipstick and fill tube mounted. You may have noticed on the bottom of the pan there was bent in pretty good, so I had to finagle that back into its original position to get the tube nut on the bottom there threaded and started, and it worked out good. There's about 1/2 inch of space between the frame rail and the transmission down there. It's probably really hard to see, but it'll fit, it'll work. If I need to, I can make an adjustment on the transmission, or take that back out again and bend that up a little bit more, but for right now it's sitting pretty good. Okay, I think the next thing we're going to tackle is this dipstick, or this fuel level gauge sender. I'm going to remove the one that's got the funky arm on it and put this newer updated version in. So let's get started on it. Alright guys, that took a little bit longer than it should have. I had to re-tap all of those holes, clean the threads out on them, and unbeknownst to me, you can only install those sender units one way. That's not a evenly spaced star pattern of bolts and screws. So yeah, that was pretty fun trying to figure out the orientation of that. Just a sneak peek at what's coming up. I've got the drive shaft straps, but the drive shaft is going to have to be serviced first before we think about hooking that up. I've got a transmission pressure gauge. I'm gonna have to figure out where we're gonna put that and run an AN line and some adapter fittings. And then of course this fun piece right here is going to get shortened to about that long. We're definitely up against a challenge on that one because the transmission is in the way now. So I think we're just going to come down through here and then dump out underneath where I had it before, but it'll be up here instead. I also have to come up with a solution to this brake. Now this brake has probably 2 to 3 times the surface area as the original one had, and it works fantastic. Just by barely pushing on this, it'll stop, but when you let off, it freewheels just fine. So, and you can push it in either direction. You can push it up or pull down on it. I haven't decided what I'm gonna do there yet. I may run a slave and like a Wildwood brake pedal or something to it. I think that would be pretty cool, because then you could just have the slave pushing up on that little arm right there and you'd have a foot brake. I also might run a cable back here that pulls down on it from a foot pedal, but I'm not sure. I'm gonna have to think and do some research on that one to see what's gonna work, take some measurements and all that good stuff. But as far as today's episode goes, I think that's probably gonna be it. We're getting down to some of the other ancillaries here. I've got to get the modulator tied into the throttle somehow. That's what tells the transmission to upshift and downshift. Since there's no transmission control unit, it's not electronic at all, which is pretty neat. Everything on this Snowcat will be mechanical at that point if I get that in and I get it working. But other than that, I think that's probably going to be it. If you guys like this episode, give me a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed yet, I'd love to have you as a subscriber. And hey, let me know what you think down in the comments. I know this isn't one of my heavily viewed series, but I love hearing from you guys. So, other than that, I hope you guys are staying safe, taking care of each other. And as always, I'll catch you next time. See you later. Bye-bye.